Hello, my name is Rick Houston, and welcome to the Scene Vault Podcast, your source for all things NASCAR history. Presented by QWare. Maintain excellence.
I said, well, then, we obviously have to find out what happened and try to correct this so it never happens again. But we were sabotaged.
The day NASCAR and all of us associated in any way with NASCAR forget its past, that's the day we don't have any future. Well, despite what you've already told us about, Darrell and your relationship with him at that particular time, and despite everything that had taken place, say in 78, you go into 79 and you win 7 races. First of all, how was the team able to set aside whatever differences they had and be in contention for the championship? I tested your leadership. I mean, that's pretty good, if you ask me.
Well, if you get the right people, you have to have qualified people in any business. I don't care what it is, whether it's in your industry or mine or whatever. And we had the talent. It was a matter of getting that talent to pull that cart in one direction. And that's not an easy thing. People have that, especially in racing, with attitudes and things that each individual has.
Yeah.
We managed to do that and put the team. I can recall, we lost the thing, I think, by the shortest margin in history of NASCAR. I think it was 11 points or something. We lost the championship to Richard. And it was interesting because afterwards, I had actually planned a big party in Las Vegas for us to fly back and party. And what happened was we were having a meeting about why we lost the race, and Robert Yates told me that he made a decision to use a different rear end ratio, being conservative and not blow the engine. And so what it really showed was, instead of us just going all out, which Petty was doing, he had nothing to lose. He already had 6 championships.
Yeah.
And I think my guys got very conservative in that last race. They wanted to make sure that they didn't fall out and everything else. And I think that from a horsepower standpoint, that hurt us. And it was a lesson for us to learn that, you got to let it all hang out. So it was tough to take, I'll be honest with you, from everyone's perspective. But it didn't happen.
After that race in 1979, you parted ways with Buddy Parrott. And then right before the start of the 1980 season, you rehired Buddy. And then about halfway through the 1980 season, you parted ways with him again. What was that situation like from your perspective?
Most of that all came from Darrell Waltrip. Darrell Waltrip was behind him working and him not working. And obviously, the driver has a lot to say about his group. And I would say that whole situation of in and out related back to Darrell and his personality and who he could work with and he couldn't.
Well, you talked about the disappointment of 79 and how you analyzed how you guys lost it. So what was your outlook going into 1980?
Well, let's pull up your bootstraps. We found out that we were too conservative. We should have won the race.
Yeah.
We had the capabilities, and had we not been so, Petty was going for his, it was a nothing deal to him in respect to, it wasn't his first. This was our first, both the team and the driver. And I would say that what we learned from that is not to be so conservative as we were, because we all felt it was a shame. We all looked at each other and, between the driver and Darrell and my brother and myself and Yates, and we just couldn't believe that we just didn't close out the deal. But that's good, because sometimes that makes you stronger. then you take more risks the next time.
Right.
At that time, two-car teams were not the norm. And going into the 1980 season, there was evidently word that you were planning to run Don Whittington in a second car. And Darrell was not happy about that. How did that situation eventually get resolved?
Well, I explained to Darrell that what Whittington did is Whittington came up to my brother and first I think they bought engines, or they were buying stuff off of us, and I really wasn't involved in any of that. But then he wanted to run a few races and was willing to pay these enormous sums of money. And I kind of told my brother, I said, you guys make the decision as to whether if this affects our main team in any way, then don't do it. It's not the end of the world. And they came to the conclusion that it was just a situation where I think it was only a racer. I forget the deal, but it wasn't any long-term thing. It was strictly he was buying a ride, basically for one race or whatever it was, and my team got together and decided, because most of the decisions we made uniformly. You run a business better when you allow your people to express their opinions and blend together. But that situation was never a competitive thing against Darrell, or was it even discussed to my knowledge. It was kind of like a one-off. No different than Yates was selling engines and had engines in half the race cars that people didn't know. But it was unusual for us to field another car. We did field cars for A.J. Foyt and Rutherford back in the early days at Daytona, which didn't turn out to be. That was part of my learning curve. That was not a good deal, but that Whittington deal was a nothing burger, however you want to put it.
Yeah.
Darrell had tried to get out of his contract in 1978 and go drive for Harry Ranier. In 1980, he gets an offer from Junior Johnson. You had the whole situation with Buddy Parrott. You had some turnover in the team. Was there ever a point where you said, okay, that's it, I'm done, I'm closing up shop, I'm going back to Connecticut? What ultimately kept you around?
Well, first of all, Darrell was young and had these ideas, as always, the grass is always greener on the other side. Harry Ranier come along and threw out. And then when I talked to Harry, I said, Harry, you do realize that you cannot talk to my race driver. And had the same conversation with Junior. And I said, because you're going to have a problem legally with me. And they got it because they were, well, not so much Junior, but Junior got it, whether his lawyers told him or what. And of course they pulled out totally. They had to, or I would have sued them. But Darrell was, I forget the first date you gave, but he was unhappy. And so we'd go through his contract and say, what is it that you're unhappy with? And a lot of times it was ridiculous. And as you note, if you went back through the records and things, you found that he continued to drive for us, and he just was showing every year he had a whole new deal, and after a while, I just took it as just a bump in the road. The grass is always greener on the other side situation.
Well,
until he decided he wanted to move.
How could the grass get any greener than driving a Gatorade car?
Well, let's face it. When he and his father-in-law came to Connecticut, it was told me that his father-in-law, who was backing him, was not in a position to do it anymore because of the public company. They couldn't sponsor, and Darrell, had run up some bills, and he really needed a deal. And, but all new drivers run across that. I mean, and he obviously was talented. And I was very happy. And I said that incident that happened with my brother pulling into a gas station off the highway going from Florida to Connecticut twice was fortuitous. It just mind-boggling to this day. And that really set the wheels in motion that I felt there was higher action going on in this deal. But,
Well, finally in 1980, Darrell did get out of his contract and did go drive for Junior. Now,
Yeah.
we've all heard different stories about how that happened. Tell us how it happened.
How he left?
Yeah, how he got out of that contract. What did he
Oh,
have to? Sure.
He just thought he could walk. He just didn't understand that the contract called, he would have to buy his contract out.
Right.
And he didn't quite understand all the nuances with respect to that. Today he does. But, Gatorade had spent a whole bunch of money, as I said earlier in the conversation, with getting ready for the next year. And what I wanted was a financial settlement. If I was going to let him go, I needed a financial settlement, a fair one out of him that made, these obligations that were set forth for the following year is absorbed by him. It just was not a fair deal. So that's all it was to that.
Right.
So we did that, and I let him go.
Ricky Rudd lasted 1 year as your driver, 1981. Was that because he wasn't able to quite break into victory lane, or was that because Bobby Allison became available for the 82 season?
Both. I think the team was so used to being very highly competitive with Darrell, and with Ricky, we gave him the best equipment, and again, he was in his learning stages. And I had to make a decision. Bobby made himself available to us. And when you measured up the two sides, it didn't take me long to figure out that we should do that. But I went a step further. We were also being approached by Miller, with the largest sponsorship in auto racing at the time. And I was under a long-term contract with Gatorade, but I also was best friends with the chairman. And Bill Stokely told me, I told him the deal, and I had 2 years left in the contract. And he said, Bill, take it. They have much more marketing dollars to spend in the sport than we do, And I said, well, here's the quid pro quo. Why don't I help you with respect to Ricky Rudd? And we helped, I forget, it's a long time ago, so I can't remember everything, but we put our effort behind that situation so that Bill Stokely and Gatorade would be as competitive as they could. So we were trying to move on ourselves by having the availability of a superstar driver like Bobby, and yet not injuring the young fella. He didn't quite take it that way, I don't think, but I don't even think to this day he knew what I had done behind the scenes for his benefit. But so be it,
Okay, 1982 Daytona 500. There was a rumor, a myth, a legend, whatever you want to call it. and from your reaction, you know what I'm going to ask.
A bumper.
That Bobby's rear bumper was somehow rigged to come off. Now, what did happen?
Cale Yarbrough hit the back of our car, and it was no rigged deal there. However he hit it and bumped us, it caused the thing to come off. We were as much shocked as everybody else. But there was no games there. There was no, we would never do that because that would injure somebody. If that bumper came off, intentionally to gain weight, situation. No, we didn't do that. That was actually, just an incident that was caused. And it may have given us an advantage, weight-wise or whatever. I also could have done other things. But,
Well, 1981, 1982, 1983, the championship comes down to Darrell Waltrip and to Bobby Allison. Given your past relationship with Darrell, what was it like to watch all that going on?
well, I like competition, so Junior and him were formative, and we believed we were formative as well. We went from the big three to where we were nothing to now we're down to two teams that were winning everything. And that, of course, was my goal. And then ultimately to be on top. And it was what you look for. If you're in a sport and you want to win and you want to be against the best, going against Junior and Darrell was formative. And we felt we had just as much chance, and we did, as they did. And we gave it our best shot and came up short.
In 1981 and 1982, you came up short. 1983, Bobby took the lead in the standings after the spring Dover race, and he was out front for the rest of the year. And it's the first championship, not only for Bobby, but also for DiGard. What did that mean to you after everything that had transpired with your team and all the controversies that you'd been through? What did it mean to you to be on top?
Oh, it's just a high, incredible high, because you work so hard to put together something and have it reach the pinnacle. And we had come close so many times. I mean, 79, 80, 82, we could have won, we could have had 3 championships. They were that close. And I wouldn't be sitting with 1 championship. But the records show that we were very, very close. But to win the championship was the goal that we set out from the beginning. And I was just glad to share that with our entire team, who worked very hard. And, with my brother and Robert Yates, who we go back a long way, it's just fabulous individuals. And Gary Nelson was just fabulous. And putting the 3 of them with Bobby together was good, was fabulous, was a big high. I was very high.
Good.
On it.
Well, there was a
To my
story.
people.
Look, there was a story that circulated that at Riverside, there was some kind of sugar residue found in the fuel cell of the car. Now, what was your reaction to that?
Well, I guess I can say now.
Yeah.
I was in the hotel in New York with my wife for the awards thing, and I got a call from Bill Franch Jr. And the car had gotten back to Charlotte, and I had got a call from my brother and from Robert and from Gary that they knew there was a problem with the car, and they obviously saw it was all clogged up. The carburetor was clogged with sugar, which meant somebody sabotaged our fuel tanks that were supposedly guarded by Union Oil and NASCAR at the time. We luckily won. We could have, when we were discussing it, it was a good thing that we put one gas tank into the car instead of the other. Because if we had put the other one in, we probably wouldn't have finished the race. Huh. So Bill called me up and he said he sent his crew up to Charlotte to look at the situation. And he asked me if I would please not, make this a big thing at the awards thing. And I agreed. I said, it's not, it's yesterday's news, but it's something we have to deal with. Because we could have easily lost the points, the number of points. And the interesting part of it was, I said to Bill Franch Jr., I said, Billy, what if my car put the other tank in and my car didn't make enough laps to come in first? What would you have done? Award the championship to Darrell? And he said, yeah.
Wow.
And I almost fell over.
Hmm.
And I said to Billy, I said, that's kind of strange. I said, he said, well, we have to go by the rule books, Bill. I said, well, then, we obviously have to find out what happened and try to correct this so it never happens again. But we were sabotaged. But luckily we had enough regular fuel to get around the racetrack the number of laps to complete. But it was a mess. But we kept it under wraps because we felt that it wasn't in the best interest of the sport, and that I was given, Bill Jr. told me that he would do everything in his power to make sure that the controls over that type of situation in the future would be much stricter and controlled. But it did happen.
Wow.
That's the real take.
Well, Mr. Gardner, the obvious question is this: what do you think happened? How do you think that sugar got in there?
No, we couldn't figure out. I mean, I had that discussion with Bill Jr. and my guys. I said, who would do this? Who had access to the Union 76 tanks? How does this all work? I mean, obviously NASCAR takes the tanks and has the responsibility of it. So the responsibility fell on NASCAR to watch it. Somebody put sugar in our tank, so they didn't want us to win. Was it some worker bee? We never found the answer out, and probably we'll never find the answer out. And we weren't accusing anyone. So, but my concern was that NASCAR would take up a much stricter stand on the control over things like that if they're going to take those controls away from us, or, a car owner, a team. It's pretty ugly.
Yeah. And it could have got worse if you'd had that other tank in the car.
And we talked about it, our guys. We said, if you had chosen, out of the two tanks to fill this one first, we may not have made it around the racetrack. It would have clogged up the carburetor.
So this was a situation where it was in two tanks. Is that what I'm?
No, the one must have been clean because we managed to finish the race. It wasn't until we put the second tank in that we started to sputter and all kinds of things were happening near the end of the race. And you guys couldn't figure it out. What Bobby talking to Yates, what's going on with this car? But it was near the end of the race, so we were able to, wherever we finished, wasn't very high, enabled us to still win the championship. I think we came in 8th, or something. But we had a much better car than that. But the 8th gave us the win for the championship, and quite frankly, I honored my deal with Bill France Jr. to leave it where it is, and they put in much stronger controls today, and different world, but it did happen.